Boys and girls, in just a moment, we're going to be in the days of Gideon and tell a story from Judges 6 and 7. But we have heard from more listeners, boys and girls. Chloeanna, Micah, Caleb, Josiah, Nehemiah, Ananiah, and Honor all listened to the program, and we wanted to thank them for being a part. Remember the cycle of the book of Judges, boys and girls? The sons of Israel sinned and did evil in the eyes of the Lord. The Bible tells us that God would bring an enemy to punish them. When the enemy came to punish them, then Israel would cry out to God in the midst of their grief, and God would raise up a deliverer. We're going to see all of that in the first few verses of Judges 6. The people of Israel did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They did evil, and God gave them into the hand of an enemy, the Midianites. And the Midianites would invade the land every year with their livestock, and they would take away their grain and take away the things that they had harvested from the field, and their plants in the field would take away everything Israel had to live on. And the Bible tells us that Israel would go into caves and other places and beat out the grain, hiding from the Midianites. But the children of Israel were oppressed, and they cried out to God, begging God to deliver. God raised up a prophet who said, I am the Lord who's been your God from the land of Egypt. And I have delivered you time after time. I brought you out of Egypt. I've delivered you time after time. This has happened because you've worshiped other gods. But at this time, God is going to raise up a deliverer by the name of Gideon. Gideon. And the Bible tells us that Gideon was beating out his wheat in the threshing floor, trying to hide it from the Midianites. And an angel of the Lord appeared to him. And the angel of the Lord said, "The Lord is with you, O valiant warrior." He said, if the Lord is with us, what happened to all those miracles that our fathers told us about? The angel says, go in this your strength and deliver Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Gideon says, Lord, how can I do that? My family is the least in all the tribe of Manasseh, and I am insignificant in my father's house. How can I deliver Israel? God's answer is, I will be with you. He said, Lord, if this is you who is speaking to me, give me a sign. And he takes a sacrifice and he puts it upon a rock, and the angel touches it. And the Bible tells us that the fire consumes the sacrifice, and the angel disappeared from Gideon's sight. Gideon fell down and says, I will die because I have seen an angel of the Lord. The Lord has a task for Gideon. He said, your first task is to go down and tear the altar of Baal. Tear down your father's altar of Baal. Gideon took 10 men with him, and he went by night because he was afraid. And they went to tear down the altar of Baal. They tore down the altar of Baal and built an altar to the Lord in its place, and offered a bull upon the altar. The next morning, the worshipers of Baal wake up, and the altar of Baal is destroyed, and an altar to the Lord is built. They ask around, and they said, who did this? And they find out the one who did this was Gideon. And they knock on the door of Gideon's father, and they said, bring Gideon out and put him to death, because he has destroyed your altar of Baal. Gideon's father says, if Baal is a god, let him contend for himself. And Gideon gets the name Jerub Baal. Gideon raises an army. The Spirit of the Lord comes upon him, and he is to go out and fight with the Midianites. But Gideon is uncertain, and he is afraid. And he says, "O Lord, if you will deliver me by Israel's hands, as you say, make the fleece wet and all the ground dry." Now, boys and girls, we have Gideon's fleece right here with us to this day. And Gideon took this fleece, and you may not be able to tell it, boys and girls, from where you are in TV land, but this is dripping wet. And he comes and he wrings out, all the ground was dry, and he wrings this out, and look at all the water he got out of that. So God gives Gideon a sign. Yes, I will deliver Israel. As you have said, all the ground is dry and the fleece is wet. Well, the second night, Gideon tried a second test. He said, "O Lord, if you will deliver Israel this time, let all the ground be wet and the fleece be dry." And the next morning, things were just like Gideon asked. So God has given Gideon signs that he is going to give him victory over the Midianites. Now, in the next scene, Gideon has 32,000 soldiers. And God says, "That's too many soldiers. And you tell them, whoever is afraid, go back home." Gideon says, whoever's afraid, go back home, and 22,000 pack up and leave. 10,000. The enemy now outnumbers Gideon's forces about 13-1. But God says, that's still too many. That's still too many. Because they will think in their own strength they have delivered Israel. And so he said, you take them down to the water and you see how they drink water. And you notice in this photo, if you look closely, that some of them put the water in their hand and cup and drink it, and some kneel down and drink it right out of the brook. Now, those 300 that drank out of the brook, God says, with those 300 men, I will deliver Israel. Gideon's army has 300. The army of the enemy has at least 135,000 according to chapter 8, verses 10 and 11. Isn't that amazing? That God says, with 300, I will deliver you. Now God tells Gideon, Gideon has asked for a couple of signs, but now God gives a sign. He says, I want you to sneak into the camp of the Midianites. And if you're afraid, take Purah your servant with you. He takes Purah, so he was afraid. And he goes to the camp of the Midianites, and God tells him that something's going to happen there. And he's going to hear something there that will give him encouragement. When he sneaks into the camp of the Midianites, he hears one Midianite hearing a dream. And he says, there was a loaf of barley bread. And this loaf of barley bread came right here in the camp, and it knocked down our tent. And he says, you know what that means, don't you? That God has given Gideon victory over us. When Gideon hears this, he is so encouraged. and he bowed low and he worshiped the Lord. And he tells his men, when you go into battle, they come, these 300 men with pitchers. And again, we have one of Gideon's trumpets with us, and they have pitchers as well, trumpets and pitchers. And what they are to do is they are to break these pitchers, or to break this pitcher, to slam it down and break it, and out comes fire. They have a torch burning in it, and they blow their horn, and they say, a sword for the Lord and for Gideon. Well, they did this in the middle of the night. And in this Midianite army's not expecting this small group of Israelites to make an attack on them. And when they do, the Bible tells us that the enemy is thrown into such confusion that they begin to fight and to kill each other. They begin to fight and destroy each other. And the Bible tells us that Israel is victorious, and Israel puts the enemy to shame. And they get two of the leading Midianites, and they kill Oreb and Zeb, who are leading Midianites. They kill Oreb at the rock of Oreb, and they kill Zeb at the winepress of Zeb. To sum it up, boys and girls, this is an amazing case. Gideon said, what happened to all those miracles if you're with us? And Gideon becomes another chapter in the story of God's great deliverances. Because with 300 men, God gave him victory over an army of massive size. Thank you, and God bless you.